Okay, welcome to this lecture. Here we're gonna talk about how to create hyper-realistic metals using compositing. So, if we go over here, what you usually will see in tutorials online or so is how to make realistic metals, but it's always a little bit shallow, in which they are only going to show you how to create with some Fresnel fall-off and how to use like an environment map and just a few basic settings, and you get something like this. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a technique how we can bring this much further, how we can make something much more alive, in which we will see all the scratches, etc., how we can control different types of blurriness, how we can get some kind of oily effects and some dirt effects when this spoon is being used. So we're gonna go over this model step by step. So the first thing that we're gonna dive into is see how we can create scratched metal, because most of the metals or metal tools that we use, they have been used most of the time, and because of their usage, like cleaning, etc., they are being filled with scratches. Now there are two examples over here that we see, and I'm going to explain what's going to be all about it. The thing is, first of all, if you're gonna create like those scratches, the approach that you will take is by using either a bump map or a normal map. But the thing is, we're talking about like really very thin micro scratches that we need to kind of simulate. And the effect that you're gonna get is the following, what we see over here. So if you create those very tiny micro bumps, the textures that I've been using were textures of 1024 by 1024, and as you can see over here, you see just barely, a little bit the repetitive pattern. So they have been used in a very small scale, so that I was short of like really thin scratches. Now, what you should remember if you're creating textures like this is that for the rendering you have to set the anti-aliasing levels to a very high standard, so that you're sure to get like the right number of scratches. So this is going to be a pass which is going to take quite some time to render. The other thing as well is that the textures themselves, by default they have like some kind of a blurring or some kind of a filter applied, and that's also something you need to remove right away, because also that's going to mess up the whole texture. So you need to have like your pure texture and very high anti-aliasing settings. Now even the combination of that is still going to give you some problems, and that's what we see right over here. Because it is reflecting into all kinds of directions, you're gonna have like what we see over here. We're gonna have like some bright reflective scratches, and that's all fine. But also right over here in somewhat darker or brighter parts, we can see like some dark reflections. Now physically there's nothing wrong with this. This is completely accurate. But the thing is, if we see like micro scratches, the way how our eyes or our brain is perceiving that information is that the darker parts are going to be always a little bit overwhelmed by the lighter parts. So they're going to be pushed away a little bit. We're not going to see them as strong. And on the other hand, the bright parts, those are going to be very visible. So we see the high contrast over here. So we need to find a way how to create from a rendering with scratches like this, how to create a rendering something like this, in which we don't have like these dark parts, but in which we have like these very bright parts. So this is the first thing that we're gonna focus on. So if I open up this compositing tool, let me just import the images, and those images you can find where you've downloaded them. So I go over here to my bookmarks, and I've placed my images right over here. So you need the animation images, not the temp folder. This is not going to be useful. So the master layer is the one that we need, and also the scratches. So import those, and so we can see both of them over here. Now you see over here by default I have this alpha map visible. Now I find this personally quite annoying, so I'm going to right click and change the viewing over here so I see only the color. So this will make it just a little bit easier to work with. So since we want to have like only the brightest parts, we're gonna combine them using our tools over here. And so this is a composition, and we do a mount operation. And the mount operator that we're going to use in this case is not going to be an add, but it's going to be the maximum. And so what it's going to do is very simple. It's going to take from each pixel of both images, it's going to check what the value is, and it's going just to take the highest value. So like that we get this effect. Now we do see a little bit our scratches, but I want to make sure that we see those scratches just a little bit more. And so what I want to achieve is that we're gonna get some more contrast just on those scratches or on the differences. And for that we're gonna use a special filter. So the filter that we're gonna use is the following, and that's one we can find over here. Filter is sharpen filter. Now a sharpen filter is going to increase the contrast. So it's going to check for its neighboring pixels, and if the neighboring pixel is going to be darker, it's going to increase its contrast. It's going to make itself a little bit brighter. So it's something you can see quite well over here. And so we still have the values very high, so this part is a little bit darker, this part is a little bit brighter. So if I go to the sharpen, check this out, then you're gonna see that darker parts are gonna get darker, brighter parts are gonna get brighter. Now we don't need it, of course, this bright. We're gonna do something like this, which is still going to look very good, but it's something in which we have some kind of control. So if you combine this, then now we see like our scratches much more vividly, and this is the kind of effect that we want to achieve. So now we see really nice scratches. Now how does this actually work? Because it's a very useful filter. Let me just draw this over here. So if we would have like some values over here, and then we have like different values over here, and so the horizontal lines or the vertical lines, those are representing the pixels. So it's checking with its neighbors, and so when there's a change, like we see over here, this dip, and this is a value that we can't change because we have like one pixel next to another, so we can't add more contrast by just removing over here the anti-aliasing or whatever that would be. So the thing that then is going to happen is it's going to make like this part brighter and then dip down, and going to make this part a little bit darker. So this is actually what a sharpen filter is doing. Now a sharpen filter is also very useful in all kinds of cases, and it's really important to know this. For example, if we see this photograph with this girl, we see a lot of detail. We see like those hair strands, it's very detailed. We see the freckles on her face. We see the eyes very clearly, etc. Now if we're going to scale this image down, so if we're gonna make the image, let's say in pixels, just half the size, then a lot of that information is gone. So we don't see those freckles that clearly anymore, we don't see the hair strands that clearly anymore. So if you're gonna use the sharpness filter, that's really going to help you bring back all those things. Now the problem is, of course, that I suddenly have a Dutch version of this, and this doesn't help me at all. Okay, so this is a sharpen filter, and as you can see, now it really brings back all those details much stronger. So we see the freckles on the face back again, and we see also the details on the eyes, etc. So that's what it's really useful for. Also, you can use the sharpen filter, especially in combination with other drawings when you do paintings, etc. It's good to create some extra touch to that. It brings extra dimension to your concept art. Okay, so that's about it for the first part. Let's move over to the second, and in the second what we're gonna do is we're gonna add a more diffuse reflection with a mask. So the mask that we've created is a mask where the fingers have been touching the spoon and also where the lips have been touching the spoon because somebody has been eating from it. Now generally what is going to happen in that case is that the surface reflection is going to be not that polished anymore. It's going to be much more diffuse on those parts. So the spit and the sweatiness of the fingers and the grease of the fingers is going to put like this small film over the metal, in which the reflection is not going to be that strong anymore. So for that we're going to import again a few new images. Control import. We're going to get over here our brushed metal and the materials, like this. So the materials is consisting out of a very simple render layer. There's no lighting or anything applied to this, so this renders very fast. But this is going to give me all the control of the materials that we need. So what we're gonna get out over here is, first of all, we're gonna get to the right channel. So I want to get the channel with the spit, and as you can see I have like 3 different masks over here, which is something very useful to have. So just by rendering once you have like 3 channels that you can use. So with using rewiring we're going to get the blue channel. And so here we see how we get our spit part. I'm going to set alpha to 0 because we don't need it anyways over here. The brushed metal, this is the one with the blurred reflection. As you can see, we have this blurred reflection over here, but it's blurring more into this direction than it is blurring into this direction, and this is an anisotropic blurring. Now the anisotropic blurring is very important because it reveals you a little bit on how scratched materials are working. So perhaps I can show this. So these are some examples of brushed metal in which we see like some anisotropic kind of effect. So basically what we have over here is we have just a reflective surface, but because of the scratches it's going to alter how this reflection is going to behave. Now we still see like a lot of detail change over here, so the reflection in this direction is still very clear, but in this direction we don't see that much change anymore, so we start to lose all the details, so we get like this elongated reflections. And so this is what anisotropic blurring does. So how does this work? Well, let me just clean. That's the following. So if we have like, let's say, scratches in this direction, like long elongated scratches, how should we perceive this? Well, we can see it as the following. If you have like a straight surface, such as this one, then a polished surface, then an incoming ray is going to bounce off in exactly the opposite direction. And so this is going to give us like a very clear reflection, just like really polished metal or just like a mirror. So rays coming in are going out in exactly the opposite direction. Now if you have like this very rugged surface, something like this, like a diffuse surface, then rays that are coming in are going to shoot back into all kinds of various directions. And so this is diffuse and this is like clear reflection. Now a scratch surface is actually a little bit a combination of both of these. So what we're gonna see over here is if we take like a sample in this direction, a horizontal sample, then we're gonna have, like, because of the brushing, a surface which is going to look more or less like what we have over here. Now if we would take a vertical sampling, we would get something which would resemble much more something like this. So this means that in this direction the reflection is going to be like very sharp, but in this direction the reflection is going to be very diffuse. So what you're gonna get in the end is, with scratches in a vertical direction, you get like a horizontally stretched specularity and reflection. So it's always perpendicular to the direction of the scratches, and this is really important to remember. So let's start to emulate this. So what I created over here is just this sphere with a mere material and a simple material over here. And let's go to the attribute editor so we can see what's going on. So if I take a render, this is the default setting. Now first thing that I need to do is, before we can see our anisotropic filtering, we need to have like a much more diffuse glossiness. So let's do that first, so that we get something like this. Now anisotropy, the thing that we find over here, is like this little value. Now the thing which is a little bit confusing is that you can move it in two directions. You can move it either in this direction, you can move it also in this direction. Now there's only one which is correct, and that's actually just moving from one to a lower value. And the reason why that is that over here you can control this by using a texture. So you can set the amount of anisotropy using a texture, and the texture is going to give you a value from 0 to 1. So it's always between these directions that you need to do that. And the reason also why this is important, it's not just because of some obscure reason. The reason is quite simple, that over here it needs to fit with the rotation, so that if you're going to use a texture for controlling the rotation, this will work as well. Now the rotation, what you have over here, is also again controlled by a texture with values from 0 to 1. So if you want to rotate from 0 to 1, you're going to rotate from 0 to 360 degrees. So you have like full control over one revolvement. So if you want to have like this anisotropic line to be like perpendicular on this one, you can use two values, either 0.25 or 0.75. Those are going to be exactly the same. 0.50 and 0 are both like equally straight. So if you're gonna check this and we're gonna render this, now here you can see what the result is of that specularity. Now let's rotate this, set this to 0.25 and re-render the whole thing, and we see again another kind of effect appearing. Alright, now let's control this rotation using a texture, because this might be a concept which is a little bit strange to understand. But if you want to have like this brushed metal with you have those circular patterns, this is something you can quite easily achieve using Photoshop. So here is an example texture. It's called Manispin. You can find it online if you want to download it. And as you can see, it creates like these circles. Now the value of 0, like we said, is going to start from in degrees from 0, and white's going to be like 360 degrees, so it's neatly going to connect to each other. And this value is 0.25, this value is 0.5, and this value is 0.75. So they have like this complete revolving effect on the texture. Now let's apply this in Maya. Let's go over here, apply it, file. I'm gonna use it's my computer, Lizzie, and we're gonna go over here. NHTV, that was a nice picture, huh? To courses, lecturing, and Minispin. This is the one that we're going to use. There's something else that we're gonna change as well, because else we're not going to see anything of that. By default, it's going to try and connect this using the alpha. Now, of course, this system doesn't have an alpha, or this drawing doesn't have an alpha, so we need to connect it with something else. So select these two, make sure that you make everything completely visible. I said completely visible. That was not completely visible. And so we need to move this down to where we can control the rotation. And so instead of using the alpha, you should connect it with either the R, G, or B. So like this. Alright, and now also we're gonna make sure that we see enough of the pattern. So we're gonna repeat this one for, let's say, 6 times, and this one for 4 times. And so let's try and re-render again. And so as you can see, is now are we going to get like a good and believable effect. And so as you can see as well, the specularity is really following nicely the curvature of this whole thing. So again, to show you how it can go wrong is over here, if you're going to use an anisotropic value which is going to be higher, then the specularity is going to really follow those lines, and the result is not going to be correct. So you would get something like this, and this is not correct at all. So try to recognize this, because this might be a mistake that you would make, and it's really important that you immediately recognize this as being a wrong type of anisotropic effect. So let's bring this back to the previous one so that we get something which looks decent again. Now we still see something very strange over here, something we really actually don't like to have. And that's over here. There's some kind of really strange anti-aliasing artifact. And there are 2 reasons for that. The main reason is actually within Maya itself, within the texturing, and the other reason is within the texture provided. So those are actually 2 things that needs to be solved. We're gonna look just at one of the, or we're gonna solve just one of them. The other one I'm just going to explain. So if we have over here the file, the texture, you go over here, you see that the filter type is set to quadratic. So I'm going to keep this image so we can compare it easily. If I switch off the filter type and we're going to re-render again, you're going to see that this is going to cause much less of a problem. So what actually is going on? What is the cause of that? So if you're going to go over here and let's zoom in onto this detail, like I said, these colors are really representing the orientation. Now, because of the anti-aliasing, what we see, we have like an orientation which goes this direction, and over here we have an orientation which goes this direction. So the moment it starts to go on the anti-aliasing, the direction of the anisotropy is going to rotate over here, and you get all these little vortices of brush rotations. And so therefore it's absolutely necessary, if you're creating textures like this, that you do it absolutely without any kind of anti-aliasing at all. Now the last thing that I'm going to show you is how to make a texture like this or something similar. This is something you can do using over here this blending And as you can see, like this, it's not too difficult to get this effect. So you can create a mask, you can cut it out and then paste it several times on different spots. Now if you want to make like a really special one which is really following the direction of your stroke, I haven't found a way other than creating something like that yourself in Houdini. So if you might know something, a tool in which you can really stroke and that it would take the direction of the stroke in order to give it a color, that would be quite nice, but as far as I know, I don't think it exists yet. So that's a little bit about the anisotropic filtering and the rendering of that. On this part over here, so we have this texture. The thing that we're gonna do first is we're gonna create like this mask that we're gonna use in order to get this metal on top of it. And the way how we're gonna do this is the following. We're gonna composite one layer of another, and we do this using a blend matte. So how does a blend matte work? Now it's for everybody actually easy to always check what's going on. So you see all these inputs we see over here. Now if you move over those inputs, you see they're becoming named the front, the back, and the matte. Now front is used by the white, the back is going to be used by the black, and the matte is controlling those things. So front is going to go in the first one. So this the rough one is going to go in the first one because we want this to be controlled by white. This is going to go in the back, and this is going to be the mask controlling it. Now we don't see anything yet. The reason is we have over here a black and white image. Now we don't want to use the alpha channel. We just want to use over here the red channel for that. And now we see a small combination. Now I think this texture is just too vague. I want to add some more contrast, so I'm gonna add right over here some color correction over here. Color correction basics, and I'm gonna add some contrast, so this is going to be made sharper, and I'm gonna gain a bit like this. Now if you look at the result, suddenly it doesn't look this nice anymore. We see all these darkish kind of spots and it looks kind of quirky. Now what's the reason of this? Well, the reason is the following. I'm going to explain how a blend matte actually is working. A blend matte is doing the following. It's going to use over here this mask to multiply with this image. So if you multiply this image together with this one, everything which is white is going to stay, everything which is black is going to become black. Now because of this having like higher and lower values, we drastically alter this. Over here also the same is happening. It's also multiplied, but with the inverse of this. And then both of these masked or multiplied images, one with the normal, one with the inverse, are both going to be added together, and that's how the blend matte is working. So because we've been pushing these values, we get like this wrong looking result. So this is something we're going to fix by using a clamp color, so we make sure everything fits nicely between the right values, and now we see like a decent effect. So if you're going to look over here to some other versions, then you can see immediately what the result is going to be like. So, and this is the nice thing also about doing those things in compositing, because you can really also check on real time on animation. So now if I go over here and press 7, then I can start playing with these values, and I can see, okay, how much of this is going to actually be shown. So perhaps this is not enough. Perhaps I want some more contrast. I do want to have a little bit more of this. And so you have like a very precise and very fast control actually as well over the whole thing. Okay, so this is all about creating the soft reflections. So the next step is about creating diffuse. What we see over here is that also because of the grease and so on that has been laid on top of this, we also going to have some kind of a diffuse effect as well. So not only the reflection is going to be scattered in more directions, but also the reflection intensity is going to be a little bit less. So depending on what you've been eating, for example, if you had like a salad with mayonnaise or something like that, it can become like really greasy. So things like we see over here. So if you're gonna go back to our compositing tool, and let's import over here. I've given its a wrong name, sphere final gathering, but anyways, that's something you have to do properly. Then you have something that can cause a complete crash. So I'm not going to send a report. I will have to open this one again. Now you don't have to worry immediately if something like this is happening. Thing is, if you have a crash such as in this case, and like I said, it can happen quite often, then there are also always ways to save this. They usually created or in this case they created a very intelligent way, which is going to be very helpful. Oh, that was an old habit of mine. Better go to the bookmarks, that's faster. So lecture 5, and if we see, we were working over here on the video lecture. If we open, it's going to say an autosave file exists, so we're going to open this one. And so nothing has been lost. So that's quite good actually. So make sure that we connect this end result. So let's try this again. And let's go over here to the metal images, and the one that I needed was the sphere final gathering, but I also needed to import at all channels. So as you can see over here we have like 92, and this one is a bigger one, so it has like more channels inside. Import all channels. Okay, so that's what we are having. Double click it, layout it. Gonna put this on the other side. Now the thing that we see over here, let's put it back to 6. You can see this one, but if you click over here we see an icon, but we don't see anything. The reason is that it is in the alpha layer. So if we check the alpha, we can see it over here, or in the RGBA. So we're gonna change this, that we can see it just inside of the color values. So right over here, add a rewire, and with the rewiring you can set it to being alpha, 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 none. Now I'm gonna make something useful out of this. We're gonna make a preset, because this is something you might need quite often. So setting the alpha to none and then putting everything to alpha. So we're gonna save this preset. I'm gonna call this push alpha. And so next time, if you're gonna use such a node, like a rewire, you don't have to do anything. You can just load, and you see push alpha, and it's gonna set immediately the values to what you need. So this is quite handy to have. Double click to get back out. Okay, so what you're gonna do right here is we're going to do a blend matte again. I'm gonna follow exactly the same principle. So we want to have like this spoon, the white of the spoon. We want to put this on top of what we have right over here. And for this we're going to use also a mask, but we're going to give the mask a separate control. So I'm going to copy and paste this whole thing again, and we're going to use the end result over here. So right now we do have like separate control. Now this looks like a little bit as if it was being painted with, as if we were using the spoon with paint. So this is something we need to change as well. Something we can do right over here. Let's see. So if we gonna check over here in the channel, we're gonna first set a color correction basics, and set this back to 7 so that we see the end result. First of all, I'm going to reduce the gain so that the color intensity is more or less matching what we have over here. Now still this is really too opaque, so we're gonna change over here also the mask that we're using. Now if you want to see the result at the same time, you can do this always using clicking on the white spot over here. Now let's see over here with this 6. The thing that I want to do is I want to have now less contrast, so I'm not going to use the contrast for this, but I'm going to use the gamma for this. And with the gamma, with pushing the gamma, you see you can reduce the contrast, and I just have to lower this value. So if we get to something like this, perhaps like a small offset, so that we don't get the dirt everywhere, we can get something like this really nicely. Some more gamma perhaps. I just want to have enough. Okay, something like this. We check our blend method right now. We can clearly see how this dirt is affecting the whole thing. So now it's loading again the images, and so we can see clearly the effect of what we did. Now it seemed that we're just missing the first frame, one reason or another. I don't know what happened here, but the main thing is that we can see the result right over here. So it seems as if the first image has got corrupted. And so what we can do over here, or again by showing 7, is we can start to play by how much we actually want to see of that diffuse surface coming through. So this is like really a dirty spoon. And the cool thing of this is, especially if you watch the specular that we see, is that with this system, real time the specular is going to be nicely adjusted, etc. So it's all working out, and that's because of the high dynamic range that we've been rendering in. So this is really important to keep this in mind and always use this. Now, let me just check out whether something went wrong or what did go wrong. Perhaps reloads might help. Yes, so that seemed to have fixed the problem over here. Okay, so that's better. Alright, so we're now in this second stage. So the thing that we're gonna do right now is we're going to start and refine a few things. And that's by doing the following. If we check over here, the next one is, if you have like these greasy surfaces, like oily surfaces, you often see this kind of rainbowish kind of effects. And so this is an effect that we want to mimic. Like I said, it was as if we were eating a salad with mayonnaise, so kind of an oily product, and you're gonna have this kind of effect on the metal as well, although in a very, very subtle way, but it's still going to be there. And depending on the thickness of the oil layer, this is going to give you like a different kind of refraction and coloring of the whole thing. And the other thing which is also very typical because of that, so if you change your angle looking on the surface, you're also changing the depth on which the rays have to pass through. And if you do that, you see the color values that they're starting to shift. And so over here the redness would start to grow and go a little bit over here and become a little bit bigger, and the purple would start to grow in there as well. So you would see like this shifting actually of colors, and this is kind of an effect that we're going to try and mimic. Now there's one thing that I just forgot to use, which I do need to show you first, is something of the second layer that we see over here. Now often metals do have sometimes a type of coating, and you can use also this Fresnel effect as a coating. So if I'm going to use over here this color correction basics and see what the result is over here, why don't we see anything? I have to reload this one as well. Okay. Well. Why is it not visible? The program is giving me a headache right now. Especially because it should be visible right over here. Especially on the RGB. Let's see. Just reloading it doesn't help. That's the problem. The nodes seem to have been disconnected. So this way it's going to help. So now we should see it. Okay, so that was a problem. So this is giving us like this Fresnel effect with control. We see the more steeper, or the more on the edge we look, the more we see of the value, and the more perpendicular we look, the less we see. So we can use this, for example, to over here control some kind of a coating, and I'm going to make like an exaggerated example over here, in which we're going to change the color quite a bit. So we're going to add like this very deep and rough looking coating. What you see right now is that we're just adjusting really everything, and what we want is this effect to happen only on a certain part. So what you can do is on each of these nodes, what you see is you have like this black input, and this is a mask in which you can limit the effect of this node to a certain region. So if I connect this one over here, and if I say right here with this node, you have always like this masking tab that we're going to use, like in this case red channel, you can limit this effect only to being something over here. And so right now we get like the effect as if we have some kind of a coat right over here. So if you want to create like hyper-realistic Christmas balls with some kind of a plastic coating on top of that, this is also a good way how to achieve this. Render effects which are quite difficult to achieve, by the way, differently. Now I'm going to reduce this effect dramatically because I want to have a little bit yellowish kind of color, and I'm going to put a bit more contrast over here. So let's see. Like this, we have a little bit more contrast, so we see the effect more over here on the side of the spoon. Now I can still fine-tune the colors so it's more yellowish, something like this. Okay, so I was talking about this oil kind of effect, and let's pray that the program is not going to crash again on me. So, oh no, I don't need to import anything anymore. I was almost forgotten, but I have it over here. So the only thing that I need to do is to rewire again and get the right material out of that. So rewire, and the channel that I need in this case is the green one. Green, and the alpha set to none. So perhaps I can also save this. Always useful to have green. So like that I have this one. But what I want to have, like I said with the oil, is I want to make sure that we have like this changing effect when we look at a different angle. Now for this we're going to combine the images again using math operation, and the math operation that we're going to use is screen. It's an operation which uses like a few subtractions and additions and multiplies, so it's a little bit too complex to just explain like that, but if you can easily find out what the mathematical solution is to that. But it gives you a little bit more subtle kind of effect. So you see screen compared to add, you see adding is going to completely push it, while screen is going to keep everything a little bit within range. So what we see now is that we have like this adjustment of colors over here. The effect exactly what we want to have. Now the next step is the following. Is we want to increase the amount of color changes that we have with the oils. So like we have in the no, not in this over here, but like in the previous example, if we go back a little bit, we see we have this repetition of patterns. So with like this green going to blue to red to yellow, going to green, going to blue, going to red. So it's repeating over and over again. So we're going to try and emulate this. I'm going to do this in an easy way. We can do this like really precise, but it's going to take us just a little bit too much time. Now, first step that we need to do is we need to make sure that we can get like this repetitive element within those layers. So to show you this, I'm going to show first a different kind of image. So to image generation, I'm using a linear ramp, and I'm going to set the end color. We're going to set that to white. Okay. So if we're zooming out, we see like this nice gradient. So what I want to get as a result is I want to have like two gradients over here. And for that we're going to do a color correction, and we're going to use a remap color. And with this remapping of the color, we're going to just create another curve. Now if you press Alt, and on the curve you can create keys, you can add keys. If you press Alt on a key, then you're going to remove that key. So it's quite simple, the interface. So like that we're gonna create just exactly what we need. A curve, and we're gonna make sure that these points are looking towards each other, so we get something nice, linear. The thing that I don't like yet is that it's not exact. I haven't figured out yet how to do this. I haven't been looking up exactly how you can set the values by hand. It's not by right clicking or so. So I don't know yet. Also I don't see any kind of values which are happening over here. So perhaps it might not be possible, although it looks kind of strange. Again over here, we're gonna save this because this is quite useful to have something like this. So in this case I'm gonna save it as a sawtooth. And so if you then again use a new remapping color and connect it to this one again, you can load the sawtooth again, and as you can see you can repeat it several times. So this effect that we have, we're just going to copy and put that over here so that we see this effect on the spoon. So this is what we need, and as you can see, the moment on that we start animating this, we see over here like this color shifting. Exactly the effect that we were looking for. Okay, now we're going to create a rainbow effect. Perhaps I can just undo this, because again over here it is easy to have like a linear ramp in order to check your result. So we're gonna create like some kind of a rainbow effect. Now there are perhaps two ways. I'm going to try this one perhaps with the color correction basics, because what you can do over here is you can set the shadows and the midtones and the highlights. Now the shadows, I want the shadows to be red and the midtones to be actually green and the highlights to be blue, but this is not exactly giving me the effect that I had in mind. So this is something we're gonna do with curves in a way. Okay, remapping color again. Now the thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna control each one of the channels separately. So the red is going to be the following. Let me show you the kind of effect that we are going to achieve. So we created this curve, and so now we're going to build a curve like this. So for dark colors we're gonna have like this reddish. For the red colors, for the mid colors we're gonna have something like this, and for the bright colors we're gonna have something like this. So this is the effect that we want to achieve. So adding the keys that we need and working with them just roughly for now. We don't care too much. And we do this for the green as well. Up, up. Moving this down. Moving this down. And then we do this for the blue as well. Moving this one down. Moving this one up. This one over here. And this one down right here. So like that we have good control. And you have over here also exactly the same navigation as what you would have in any other view. So with the spacebar and with the spacebar control. So it's very similar to what you have in Photoshop. Let's see over here. Okay, need to adjust these values. So the blue seems to be alright already. Now adjusting the green. Something like this. Something like this. And I'm going to have red. Something like this. So now if we check them all at the same time, we can really try to balance this just a little bit more. Scale this up so that you have some more space to work with. So increase the range of the yellow, perhaps by having some more overlapping. Something like this. Well, it becomes a bit too bright perhaps, and we're gonna have some more overlap over here as well. Changing this bluish tone, having the green on a much larger scale as well over here. So it's really just balancing this out, trying to get the whole effect looking kind of decent. So something like this. Okay, so once you have this, again you can save this as being, for example, rainbow. I'm gonna call this rainbow 01 because I might think of some other shapes that I want to use in the future. And so now you can just really connect this one to this. So we see like this gradual change, which looks actually quite interesting. But we're still gonna change a few things over here. Before I'm going to do this coloring effect, I'm going to modulate the whole thing also again with another version of this. And in this case I'm going to multiply these results with this. So if we're gonna do a composition, a mount operation over here, and we combine the sawtooth together with this using a multiply, you see something like this over here. So now I can start to, let's say, control, make this a little bit brighter, and let's see what the result is looking like. Okay, so this seems to be quite good, and let's see how this is going to affect everything. So now we see like we have this nice thick oily layer at the beginning, and it just drops away towards the end. The other thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that it's only affecting the parts which are greasy, of course. So for that, again, we're going to create a copy of the whole thing, and I'm going to give it some separate control again. And this end result is again something we're going to multiply. Math operations. And we're going to combine it over here. We're not going to add it, but we're going to multiply it. So now it's just sitting within the range of that mask. As you can see, we see the grease markings and grease spots over here. And then the only thing we need to do with that is we need to composite that again, and since it's an oil layer, we can just add it on top of this result, and so we get something like this. Now, of course, this is way too bright, so you need to color correct it in such a way that it's going to be just balanced out really nicely. So the gaining is going to be lowered so much that you're hardly going to see it, that you just are going to feel it actually more. And this is really important in order to get to realism. You should be able to kill your darlings. Now this is a little bit being too much because everything was set to 0. But now we have a little bit in a very subtle level that rainbow effect that we see over here. And so that's something you really need to keep in mind. Always be very careful and be just very subtle in your work. It's always going to be way better than really wanting to show off, like saying, hey, I can do this, I know what I'm doing. Make sure you just work with subtlety. Then there's just one thing that we're going to add, and that's something we can find over here, adding glare. Glare is something which typically in most, let's say, tutorials is being explained very, very wrongly. And I'll show you in a bit what they're just doing. So first of all, we need to get our glare effect, and the glare we're gonna get, or the right specular intensity is something we're gonna get right after we did this over here, connection with rewiring. I can use also actually I can do it even over here using the oil on top of that as well. So the end result is going to be where our glare is going to be extracted from. So first thing that we need to do is we need to get with the color correction, we need to get the just the specularity that we see over here. Now, because we're working in a high dynamic range, we can make it so that we can just see only these things. Now, you shouldn't touch the gain, because what you want to achieve is you want to keep the same amount of density. So what we're going to do is we're going to offset until we lose the background completely. Offset, offset, offset. So now we do have like no background anymore. Something like this. And this is the thing that we need for our glare. Now what most people are doing is the following. Yeah, first of all, let's start with adding a blur, because there are some other issues which I need to explain. If you're using a blur over here and you start blurring, you're gonna see a weird effect. This is not going to grow really, it's going to become vaguer, but it's also going to be eaten away. So this is what's happening when you're blurring. And the reason for this is that all these pixels around here, because of the color correction basics, are negative values, and this is something we need to remedy first before we can start doing a decent blur. So again, you have to go to color correction, use a clamp color, but we want to keep like the higher intensities over here. So we want to clamp over here darker colors, but we want to keep the higher intensity. So therefore, just set this to a higher value, say 20s. So if you start to blur right now, you're gonna see this is looking much better right now. Now in most tutorials, this is what they say, okay, for creating a glare, that's just the only thing that you need to do. Wrong node. Mount operator. Gonna add a glare like this, and you're done for. Now this is not correct. Like lighting, also glare has like a quadratic fall-off, not a linear fall-off, and this is something we need to mimic. Now in order to mimic this, we need to do the following. We need to blur in a certain kind of way. By the way, something that I need to show as well is the effect of the alpha mask. Now this image doesn't have like any alpha anymore inside. Now when an image has an alpha, like this one over here, you're gonna see it's going to affect the blurring in a very strange way. So you see it's pinching our blurring in this very strange way, and so this is also something you need to avoid. So make always sure that you don't have any kind of mask inside. So best thing to do is always you do your color correction basics, you do your clamping, but also add over here a version with no alpha, and then you're gonna have no problem with those kind of things. Okay, so how to mimic this quadratic kind of effect? Well, first of all, we need to get some room, because we're gonna copy a lot of these blurrings. So I'm gonna copy them just like a whole set of them, move them apart, and you're gonna increase the blurring value of them in also a quadratic way. So first blur is going to be a blur of 2, the second blur is going to be a blur of 4, a blur of 8, 16, and so on and so forth. 32, 64, 128, 256. And so now all of these blurring values, we need to add them together. So using math operations, we can start to combine them. Now this is something which has been much better executed in Nuke, because in Nuke you can just use one node and add as many as you want. So like this, at each time the results. And so the end result should be something like this, and this is giving us like this really nice high quality glare with this soft fall off. So this is really something that we would like to keep. Now we've been adding some effort in this, trying to get this as good as possible. So this is a setup that I would really like to keep at all times. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine the whole thing, and I'm going to create a macro out of that. Now creating macro is selecting this and clicking on a node with the right mouse button. You see over here, create macro. And so this is going to create this one single node. A macro. Now again, you have to do exactly the same approach like with other nodes, that you're going to create a preset for that, for a macro. So we're going to save it as a preset, saying this is going to be the glare. And so if we're going to use a new macro again, and you want to get the glare again, you see over here between all these nodes, macro node, you can use it and you can load the glare. So once you connect this, you see immediately we have this effect. So this is how you can create your own functions actually within this compositing package. Now of course, if we see the end result, this glare is way too bright, so we're going to need to adjust this whole thing. First of all in intensity, and also a little bit in color. So I'm going to adjust this slightly, so it's a little bit yellowish, make it even a bit weaker. Now it's too green. Something like this. And like that you can really fine-tune and tweak it until it really matches actually the effects that you see from your camera. And the only thing that I perhaps would do over here still at the very end is to just add one filter. Again, a sharpen at the very end, not that bright, but again just a very small value. Perhaps even this one is too much. Just slightly. Just again to make the image a little bit sharper. You have to be very, very careful with this one because it easily goes completely over the top. And so this concludes actually what we have over here. This is how you can create metals using compositing.